Mindful eating means different things to different people. But to me, it's all just about awareness in your mind and your body of what you're eating and how you're eating. And I think the first step is to make sure that you're physically hungry when you're eating. So a lot of us are eating on the run, we eat at the desk at work, we eat, whilst we're watching telly, we eat, whilst we're multitasking because everyone's trying to do everything quickly. But I think that the first thing to do is to decide if you're actually physically hungry, because sometimes we're so busy just trying to do everything, fit everything in the day, that we actually forget to ask ourselves if we're actually hungry, or are we just eating because the clock says that it's lunchtime. So how do you tell the difference between physical hunger and a craving? That's something that a lot of people don't know. And physical hunger, you can actually feel it in your body. So if you actually think about your stomach, does it feel empty? Is it gurgling? Do you actually have physical sensations of hunger? And sometimes we think, oh my God, I'm so hungry. And we genuinely believe we're hungry, but we're actually just bored, or we're stressed, or we're procrastinating, or, we have a myriad of emotions that have convinced us that food will fix the problem, whatever that problem is. So when you first think, I'm hungry, the first thing I want you to do is just think, am I physically hungry? And then actually, really tune into your body and say, is my stomach actually empty? The other thing about physical hunger is it happens gradually. It's not something that just goes kaboom, suddenly I'm starving. It's a gradual thing. So let's say you're walking past the bakery and there's some lovely smells wafting out, and then you go, oh, I'm starving. No, you're not starving. You're just smelling those amazing smells that are making you want to eat. The other thing is when you walk past that bakery, you don't just say I'm starving. You say I'm starving for a bagel, for a croissant, for bread, for whatever it is that you've just smelled or seen the ad for, or you've seen someone eating. So with physical hunger, it comes on gradually. So if you ever feel yourself saying, suddenly out of the blue, I'm starving, it's unlikely. Also, if you're craving a specific food, so like you're walking past the bakery, you're suddenly craving, bread. So if it's a specific thing, it's usually a craving. Because if you're physically hungry, just some simple, perfectly nice but not dopamine rewarding food like boiled eggs, that'll hit the spot. That'll be fine. That'll fill you up. If you're just physically hungry, that will do the job. But when you're craving something, you want that dopamine hit and you want it now. And it's got to be that particular food, Not many people say, I'm hungry, I want chocolate, and it's actual physical hunger. So that's really important to know the difference between the physical hunger and the craving. So once you've decided, yes, I am actually physically hungry, and it's not, boredom, stress, one of the other things, and if you do feel those other things and you think to yourself, oh, actually, I'm not physically hungry, then try and find a list of things that for you will fill in that need. So, if you're hungry because you're lonely, call a friend. If you're hungry because you're bored, find a list of hobbies or activities that you can do during that time. Like, try and find something that will fill the actual need, because it's not hunger. The next thing is that it's really important to eat in an aware state, not just of the food, but of all the things about the food, like the smell, the look, the texture, the taste, all these things that sometimes we don't even notice. Like sometimes you get to the end of eating something and you barely even know what you've eaten. Like let's say you go to the movies and you're eating popcorn, you can eat the whole thing of popcorn and barely remember eating it because you're distracted. You're not focusing on it. You're not going, oh, that's crunchy. Oh, that's salty. Oh, like you're not really savouring it. Not that I'm suggesting popcorn is something you should be eating. So really when you're mindfully eating, really savour the food. So, before you even put it in your mouth, what does it look like? What colour is it? What's the texture on the outside? All those things. What does it smell like? And then when you put it in your mouth, what are all those textural things? Is it juicy? Is it crunchy? In the taste, is it salty? Is it spicy? So really think about those things. And even in your head, you can even just sort of go through those things in your mind and just really slowly, consciously become aware of all those things that if you were just shoveling food in that you wouldn't be aware of. So when you slow down, putting your knife and fork down in between each bite can also really help, because we're very used to, we put one forkful in our mouth and then before we've even finished chewing, we put the next one in. So ideally, you're chewing for maybe 20 or 30 times before you swallow when you're mindful eating. And then you put your knife and fork down, have a breath, and then pick it up and go to the next one. So it takes longer. It just slows you down naturally when you do that. One of the things that does is it gives time for the signal, I'm hungry, to go from actually eating the food to your brain. Because the brain doesn't just automatically know that you're full the second that you've put the food in your mouth. It takes about 20 minutes, they say, for it to get that signal to get to your brain. So sometimes you know how you've finished your dinner and you think, oh, I'm still hungry. But if you just wait a few minutes, suddenly you're not hungry. Has anyone experienced that? Yeah? So I think it's really important to remember that and always wait at the end of a meal if you feel hungry. And the slower you eat, the more chance you've got for that message to get to your brain. So you don't need to wait, because by the time you get to the end, you don't need, you already know that you're full. You don't need seconds. So I think as well, it can be really useful to stop when you recognise that you're full, even if you haven't finished. So, when you're a kid and your parents say, oh, I spent a lot of time making that food, you need to eat it all, there are starving children in Africa or wherever, it's a waste, think of all the money I spent on it, la, la, la. Like most of us have had some sort of experience like that. So we're trained to finish what's on our plate, whether or not we're hungry or full. So what I want you to practice doing when you leave here is that when you eat, even if there's literally one mouthful left on your plate and you're full, do not eat it. You are not a rubbish bin. Remember that, because, it's not a waste if you just put it in the fridge and have it later. You'll enjoy it more when you're hungry. So practice that, no matter where you are in your meal. If you eat slow enough, you should have the signals going to your brain telling you when you're full. Stop when you're actually full. Don't wait to finish the plate. And I think it's really useful to do this consciously at least once a day. So it's unrealistic to say that every single meal that you're going to eat is going to be fully conscious and you're going to be sitting there and savouring every mouthful and taking ages. I mean, we just don't have the time for that. But if you do it once a day, really consciously, where you're not multitasking, you're not working, you're not looking at a screen, you're thinking about the food, you're slowing down, you're putting your knife and fork down. If you do that once a day, then it's like a muscle that's being strengthened. And then in the other meals of the day, it will naturally become easier to eat slower. And I'm a fast eater. Naturally, I'm a fast eater. So I have to really be aware of it. I do have to consciously tell myself to slow down. And the more often I do that really very conscious slowing down, and I really say to myself, right, I'm really going to do my mindful eating, the more often I do that, the more I find it easier to slow down at the other meals. That I'm not thinking, I may be multitasking and talking to someone or whatever, but I'm slowing down more consciously because I've had those neural pathways reinforced. The other thing is that being grateful and thankful for the food can be really helpful as well, and that's part of that slowing down process, rather than just stuffing it in your mouth and not thinking where it came from. Just being grateful, like, an animal died for that meat, or, farmer spent a long time, on the fields for those veggies, or, someone cooked that for me, or, whatever it is, just being grateful that you can afford food, and good food. The fact that you're here means that you can afford food. So just being grateful, that can really help as well. I think that the main benefits for mindful eating are that it helps us to slow down so that we don't overeat. And a lot of people, especially with weight issues, do find that they overeat because they stuff their face so quickly, because it is for emotional reasons, not because they're hungry. And so then they overeat, but they don't realise they've overeaten until afterwards, when they're so full that their stomach hurts, and then they've eaten too much. So slowing down can just really help with that. But more importantly, it's about your relationship with food. If you are only using food to soothe yourself, and because you're stressed and because it gives you that 2-second dopamine hit, then you don't really have a good relationship with food, your mind or your body. So just slowing down, really being grateful, really noticing all those things about the food, it can really help us to appreciate that the food is for nourishment. Yes, it can still taste good, but it's not just about that 2-second dopamine hit. It's not just entertainment. It is nourishment, and we can appreciate and enjoy it a lot more, I think, when we slow down and savour it. So I've created an acronym that I think helps us to remember the steps, and it's called PACE, because we want to pace ourselves. So P is for physical hunger. So making sure, doing that body scan, making sure that we are physically hungry. And it can be helpful to do some deep breathing before you do that exercise so that you're a bit more in tune with your body. So Avi will be talking about breathing soon, so you'll know all about how to do that. A is for awareness. So that's when you're actually eating the food. You're aware of, the taste, the texture, the smell, the temperature, all of those things. Then C is for control speed. Slow down. And E, end when full. You are not a rubbish bin. So pace. At the end of tonight, when I give you the affirmations that I told you about, I'll also just give you a summary of that pace as well so that you can think about it and remember it. Try and, if you can, do it once a day and see if it makes a difference for you. So any second now, they're going to bring out some platters of food, just little starters. And Sue, are you going to bring them to the table? Yep, awesome. So one platter for each table. And what we're going to do, don't eat it yet, please. You have to practice mindfulness and patience. Wait till everyone's got theirs. I promise the people who haven't got food will get food soon. They haven't forgotten you. So when we start, we're going to go with the cherry tomatoes first because I think they're the most texturally exciting. But anyone who is a carnivore or who doesn't like tomatoes can maybe try a nut or something else that's on that plate. We need to make sure there's enough cherry tomatoes for everyone. Let us know if there's not enough cherry tomatoes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, everyone's got some. Okay, so there'll be time for socialising soon, but right now we're concentrating on the food. So I want everyone to pick up but not put in their mouths a cherry tomato, unless you don't eat cherry tomatoes, in which case pick up something else. Okay, so before we put it in our mouths, I want you to look at the colour, feel it, look at different people. It's got different, some people have got yellow ones, some people have got red ones. Think, are they dark in colour, are they light in colour? And then I want you to put it in your mouth, but don't bite yet. And when it's in your mouth, just feel that lovely soft roundness with your mouth and your tongue. And then when you're ready, give a big bite and have all those lovely juices come out. Slow eating, 20 to 30 bites if possible. Some people might have already swallowed. I might be too late on that one. So slow down as much as you can and think about, is it sweet? Is it tart? Notice all the different textures of the juice and the pips and the outside. Really experience the tomato. Because normally when we eat cherry tomatoes, it's part of a salad and we pretty much don't even notice them. They're just kind of part of the salad. But when you actually eat it on its own, you notice so many more things about it. So now I want you to choose something else from the plate that's your favourite thing that you can see there. And have a look at it, look at its colour, its texture, what does it feel like from the outside? Is it crumbly? If it's the cheese? If you have a big piece of meat, maybe cut it in half and just put a small bit in your mouth. We don't want to be overstuffing ourselves. And then when you're ready, put it in your mouth and do the same thing that you did with the tomato. Slowly, 20 to 30 bites, chews, and really appreciate the taste and the texture. And notice how different it is from the tomato. Presumably there's no juice in whatever you're eating. It's a drier texture. just really appreciate that taste and notice it and take time to think in your head about the flavour. And I hope you'll all agree that things taste better when you slow down. Do you reckon? Yeah, getting some nods. Taking in the flavour. And I mean, none of these things are complicated. They're all really simple foods. So I think when people are low carb at first, sometimes they feel like everything has to be a substitute. You know, you've got to have your low carb, this, that, and the other. But just real whole foods are amazingly delicious. And I think the slower you eat them and the more you appreciate them, the more you realise you don't need all those substitutes. Of course, they're nice occasionally, like, you know, tiramisu from Regretless, for example. But I just love whole foods. So we will, later on, I'll be doing some affirmations around mindful eating as well that might help you to make this part of your life. But in the meantime, we're going to hear from Avi and learn about breathing, which will be a wonderful experience. I'm looking forward to it.